So we're here to talk about, I understand that on campus the two prevalent content management systems are Drupal and WordPress. So that's the ones we're going to talk about. I think I'm going to let Ted talk more about WordPress because he's done tons of work with WordPress, and WordPress is heavily used at Yahoo for our external blogs and other things. I've used Drupal myself because for a couple of reasons. I'm going to touch on them later. But I've been using Drupal for the last couple of years, and I like Drupal. So if you hear a tone of me being slightly closer to Drupal than WordPress, you'll know why. Okay. So anyways, so I guess most of you by now know what CMS or content management systems are. CMS stands for Content Management System. The three major attributes of content management systems are ability to share content among several users who participate in a specific community portal or site. There is ability to contribute based on the user based on predefined role. And by role, I mean things like administrator, contributor, editor. So it could be a different type of a user based on his or her type that is defined by the system. They are allowed or disallowed to contribute certain content or participate in the administration function of that community portal. The third one, which I think is important but rarely mentioned, is the one that you can control revisions. So content management systems allow you to roll back if you were drunk and you put something wrong into the system, you can roll it back. But actually, it's a great system because when many people contribute, mistakes can happen, and so you can always roll back. You can go back as many revisions as you want. So there are other things about CMS that we could talk about. You can look in Wikipedia. There's tons of stuff that they say. But to me, I think these are the three most important ones, which is sharing, definition of roles, so this is user privileges, and the third one is the version control system. So we've got two major CMS content management systems, Drupal and WordPress. As you can imagine, in order to share the system, it needs to be in order to share the content, it needs to be stored somewhere. So this leads us to the concept of databases. So all of these content management systems rely on some kind of database. In Drupal's case, it would be a handful of databases, actually. MySQL, Postgres, MariaDB. I never heard of that one, but I just learned about it yesterday. Apparently, it's quite a popular database. SQLite. So Drupal is very widely supported by multiple databases. From what I understand, WordPress is primarily works on MySQL, so I don't know if it's a problem for you guys, but it may be a problem for some organizations that may have been relying on other databases or need more powerful databases than, let's say, MySQL. The other thing is that both of these platforms are developed using PHP, which is the processing language that does all the magic, such as when you submit a form, it can analyze what you've submitted and give you some feedback. It can inject parts of the page. It can make certain decisions based on the user input and things like that. So those are languages like Python and PHP and Perl, but these are using PHP. Some funky things I found about these two systems are I like the statistics. So if you look in Wikipedia, for example, and I'm telling you from memory, so if I screw up something, the Wikipedia says that Drupal is used on at least 1% of all internet sites out there. So I don't know how many internet sites out there, but we can just say probably in millions and millions, right? So 1% is probably not that small, right? And then if you look at WordPress, and these guys are saying, we're used on nearly 13% of 1 million largest websites out there. Now that's a little bit, okay, whatever. So I don't know what those 1 million largest sites, but it is it's pretty interesting stat. I kind of like it because it's like, okay, you twist it however you like it. I mean, one thing is clear that both of these content management systems have captured quite a large market share, and I know there's Joomla competing for attention as well, but I don't know much about Joomla, so I'm not going to talk about it today. Drupal started as a content management system in 2001 in January. It was developed for, I think, by developers and for developers initially, and it kind of remained that way. I mean, they've gone through 7 versions now. The latest one is 7.2. And it's still, they've done more work in version 7 to make it more user-friendly. But, I've been using Drupal, I think, for at least, 4 years now, and I sometimes get lost. I mean, I'm supposed to know where things are. So once you know how the system works, it's really very powerful. It's really great. It does a good job at sort of like, putting you in the right context and giving you the right access to logs, and you can, manipulate modules, you can manipulate roles easily, and not to mention that it is a pretty extensible framework. You can make anything out of Drupal you want. It's kind of like a Play-Doh, you just take it and you do with it what you want. WordPress was initially started in 2003 as a blogging platform, and I think it did remain to be largely perceived as a blogging platform. Although, again, as a content management system, it can be anything. But it is largely used for blogging, and I think it is great at what it does. It's perfect for users because it doesn't really require you to be a developer to understand its structure. It's very easy to post stuff on WordPress. It's very easy, in fact, to administer WordPress. So it is great for the user who doesn't necessarily need to know about APIs and frameworks and plugins, and maybe the only word they may need to know is the theme, right? Because you want to make your site look kind of cool and sexy. But that's about the only thing. Unless you want to go beyond way and beyond and, do things with widgets and things like that, then you may find it a little bit as a system that you need to read a little bit upon. But other than that, it's very, very friendly. There's about 10,000 plugins developed for Drupal, which is the cool thing about being a developer, love child, is that developers love it. And I mean, they've developed anything and everything for Drupal. But obviously, as I pointed out before, some of these plugins also require some knowledge of PHP, some understanding of how Drupal works. So even there, you may just find that some plugins are easier to install, others are more difficult. So administration-wise, WordPress has always been very proud of the fact that their installer takes only 5 steps. In fact, at the very end of the installation, those of you guys who have done WordPress installations, I think there's a screen that says, oh, you were disappointed there were no more steps. Well, too bad. This was the last one. So they're that proud of their 5-step install process. Drupal has finally nailed down. There was an installer, I think, started from Drupal 5. In Drupal 7, 6 and 7, they perfected the installer. So it is pretty fast. It is very friendly. So from that point of view, both systems are doing pretty well. Themes. I'm going to get closer to accessibility because this is really the main topic of today's conversation. Both of these content management systems support theming. Drupal has its famous theming engine. I think it's called PHP template. I can't remember the exact name, but it is a basically engine that allows you to design themes by using basically PHP statements intermingled with HTML. Similar is for WordPress. The process of developing themes is slightly different, but the concept is the same. You mesh up HTML and PHP to sort of insert certain parts like headers, footers, and content panes and things like that. So PHP helps you to glue the thing together, but what actually goes into into the actual page, when you produce it, then it's actual HTML. So the question of accessibility comes up very often. Which one is better? So you would think, now here comes Victor, okay, like I told you before, right? So I use Drupal. So you would think that WordPress actually, for all its friendliness and easiness of use, would be the most accessible content management system out there. In my experience as a screen reader user, I didn't find it that way. I actually think that because it's so friendly, because it's so visual, it actually may present problems specifically for screen reader users. It also tends to, I'm talking about WordPress now, it tends to produce not as clean of a code unless you go in and actually modify things. Drupal is a bit more traditional in that respect, at least sort of by default. Even the visual editor, at least I installed Drupal yesterday, the visual editor is not on by default, which obviously makes it simpler for someone like myself to put in the content or do any kind of additions. So that is one interesting thing to point out. And I'm going to give you a quick demo later on, just so you guys can experience the way I experience both of these systems. On the user side, there is really no inherent reason why either WordPress site or Drupal site should be inaccessible. Remember I mentioned we're talking about HTML and you know, I mean, how badly can you screw up HTML, right? It's HTML after all. So if you do use your semantic markup, if you use your you know, developer chops and you do best practices stuff, there is really no reason as to why you know, the code should be inaccessible, the page should be inaccessible. Now, one thing I will have to point out is that WordPress for longest time, for example, in WordPress, when you insert the image, right? So right there, when you added the compose screen, sorry, when you post a entry, there would be a screen that allowed you to put in the image. But from my memory, there was no place where you could enter the alt text. So, for example, in our case at Yahoo, when we had to put together Yahoo Accessibility blog, we actually had to create fields to allow for alt text. Now, that may have changed, but that's at least I remember when I looked at WordPress, that's what it was. Now, Drupal in that instance was very interesting because with Drupal 6, for example, if you wanted to insert the image, you had to install like, I don't know, it was like 6 plugins or something, just to insert the image, and it was like, it wasn't even clear. You had to upload the images first to your server, then you had to browse for that image on your server, then once you found it, and then so you were at the mercy of the plugin. So a plugin had it implemented, which the ones that I looked at, they at least had a field where you could put in the alt text, and so then the editor at least had the possibility to put an alt text for image. As far as the structure of the pages are concerned, again, most, both WordPress and Drupal would do pretty well. You would have a heading that would start your article, and then if whatever goes into the entry was into the blog entry or article entry would be dependent on the content producer to put the right HTML in. So, for example, if you wanted to put a list of items, you probably would be, if you had a visual editor, you would have to choose list, and then you say, these are my list items, and then the editor would create HTML code for you. If you didn't choose list, and instead you just put like, one item underneath another one, and you didn't specify that it's actually the list, then that's the kind of code you would get, right? Because the WordPress wouldn't know that you actually meant HTML list. They're just going to go using the visual layout. So there are some things that content editors need to keep in mind, even when you use visual editor. And that's why it is easier to make mistake in WordPress, because you're using visual editor, and as such, you're being a visual person. If you don't know if you don't know how to create sort of accessible code, you may easily end up with inaccessible one because the visual editor kind of doesn't give you clues that, hey, you have a list. You may want to tell the editor that it's actually a list so that it can create appropriate HTML code. And by the way, I probably should have asked you at the beginning, how many of you guys here are developers and how many are just sort of people who are users of content management systems? So if I'm saying some obscenities that you don't understand, just feel free to. Actually, can we do this quick test? How many people are developers? Can you just clap for a second so I can? And users? Okay, so there are more developers, but it seems like 2/3 to 1/3, something like that, right? So anyway, I think what I'm going to do eventually is just show you guys how these two systems. What I'm going to do is just quickly go through a couple of screens and then try to create a post, and you will be able to see for yourself. Now, of course, what I'm going to be showing here is primarily the screen reader user point of view, which is not everything that accessibility is about, because there are other things like color contrast. There are other things that you have to make sure that you use fonts so that fonts can resize and readability is appropriate. But that's not something I can talk about. I think Ted may actually touch on some of these issues. But the one thing that I can tell you, if it is good for a screen reader, you're in a pretty good way, because this is like the hardest assistive technology to make happy. These guys are, like, if you don't put alt text, it's not going to invent it for you, right? So it is a bit unfair, maybe some will say, but it is fair in the respect that this is like because it's such a black magic for most people. If you can make it work with a screen reader, you should be on the right way to making your content accessible. Before I show demos, I wanted to also mention one important thing, which may be important for big organization like Berkeley or any other big organization to consider, which is Drupal, starting from version 7, has a dedicated accessibility team. So their commitment is actually within the community itself. So in fact, on campus, I think you have some experts who are pretty aware of this. This is very important, because if you've got people who are pushing accessibility as one of the core features of the content management system, I think it's very important in that it means that this stuff is here to stay. So in WordPress, I found only one page that talks about accessibility, and it gives you some advice on how to make sure you make your code accessible. And this is great, this is fine. That still doesn't mean that it's worse. It's just I wanted to point out that, politically speaking, Drupal has some sort of community commitment from the community to make sure that accessibility is part of the whole framework. To that effect, they have refactored most of the stuff in Drupal 7. Even the drag and drop functions are accessible via keyboard, and you can use them with a screen reader. And so this is kind of cool. So let me see if I can give you some demos, and then you guys can ask questions if you have any. I have some URLs. Maybe what I'm going to do is afterwards, I don't know if it makes sense, I'll just pass on some notes to people. But it is pretty easy. If you want to learn about Drupal accessibility, you just go to drupal.org, and you just search for accessibility. They've got a wiki. They've got the accessibility pledge thing, which is kind of cool. I was happy to see that, because Drupal has this thing where when you develop a plugin or theme for next version of Drupal, you say, I pledge that this will be finished by so-and-so date or by such and such version. So they've got, they've written similar pledge for accessibility. So if you care, you say, I pledge that by version 7, my plugin will be fully accessible. That is a great statement to make for a community-driven project, I think. All right, at this point, I think there should be like a music break or something, but maybe Ted can hum something. Ted, you want to hum something or something?
He's the musician that music, for test purposes only.
Okay, so, okay, I'll slow her down. Oh, sorry. Okay, let me just do this thing here.
Rate 60%. Voice acts. Rate 60%. 55, 50%. 45%.
Is it better?
Leg. My account.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay.
Leg. Log out.
Okay, so I'm using here a voiceover screen reader, which is built into every Mac. It's part of the Mac OS. It turns out it's fairly sufficient for this particular demo. And it's a pretty good screen reader. You already guys have it. So, you know, if you do use a Mac, it's right in and you can, you know, start testing. I mean, at least to get an experience for what it means to be a screen reader user. So let's see, I'm here in Drupal right now.
Enter the terms you wish to search for. Search edit text. Search button.
So they have refactored pretty much everything. Like I said, their search form, their, you know, their article creation screens, their administration screens. So what I'm going to try to do is, let's see if I'm just going to create an article to show you how that feels, and then I'm going to show you quickly how drag and drop works. And I think that should be enough for Drupal.
Leg. Add content. Leg. Add new content.
So I'm going to
busy.
choose this link, add new content.
Busy.
Oops.
Leg. Skip to main content.
Every page here, by the way, has a skip to main navigation, which is kind of convenient as a first thing. So if you wanted to quickly skip, let's actually see if this works. Oops.
Leg. Close overlay. Visit leg. Home.
Oh.
Leg. Article. Leg. Basic page.
Okay, so I've got two choices now: article, basic page. So I'm going to just choose.
Leg. Article.
Let's do article.
Leg. Drupal. Leg. Title star. Edit text.
So again, I just got to, here's the form. So you've got title, that you can type the title of your article. So I'm just going to say.
activity. Tags. Edit text.
So this is tags, where you can enter tags. Obviously, so if you wanted to tag your article.
Leg. Edit summary.
Edit summary. If you wanted to provide a quick summary for your article, this is where it would go. I mean, this is the link that will allow you to edit it.
Body left there and edit summary right there and edit text.
Here's the body, so you can type.
Exclaim, new line. I can't come up with anything better. New line. Why? Exclaim, new line. Sorry. Leg. More information about text formats.
Okay, so they've got text formats. You know, you can choose how. When you create an article, you can tell Drupal, for example, okay, I just want to treat this as a plain text. If you put some links, let's say to websites, there is a filter that will notice these pieces of text and it'll convert them into actual links. So those are called.
Body leg. More information about text formats.
Those are called text formats, and you know you can read more information.
Filter HTML text format pop-up button.
So here's again filter HTML. Then if I pick this, you've got different choices for what format to choose.
Choose file button.
Choose file. This is where you would be uploading your image.
Upload button.
Unfortunately, let me see. Do I have any images?
Menu settings not in menu left. Upload. Choose file button.
Yeah, I wasn't ready for the image part. But so when you choose the button, you're gonna browse for the image, and when you upload it, you will be able to specify the description for your image, which will become your alt attribute. So that's kind of cool.
Upload button.
Then you can upload.
Leg. Menu settings not in menu left. Add leg. Revision information. No revision. Revision leg. URL path settings. No areas. URL path settings. No areas. Leg. Comment settings open. Comment settings open.
Okay. Those things that you hear repeat, this is one of the things sometimes you see on the internet where people in the tooltip or the title, they repeat what's already said in the link. That is actually not a very good thing. It's great when the title provides some enhanced information, like if you said, let's say link had administration, the title could say, you know, administer your website settings or something like that. That could be useful, but in this case, what we end up is with two repetitions.
Leg. Authoring information by exam leg. Publishing options published. Promoted to front page. Publishing options published. Promoted to front page.
Okay, so this is what.
Provide a menu link. Uncheck checkbox. Save button.
So I'm going to save this.
Empty scroll area. Page has 10 headers. 30, vid leg, hello, Zaren, user.
So a pretty simple form. Now, interestingly enough, actually, as I told you guys before, I was actually trying to see how I can enable visual editor. I assumed that there was a visual editor built in, but the best I just couldn't find it. But the cool thing about filter, what I liked about filter formats is that, you know, they can be set per user. So if you know, for example, that one of the users who contributes to the website, you know, for some reason, like if they're a screen reader user, or if they don't really need visual features, you can set for that user to use the simple text entry, which, as you have seen, is pretty easy to use and it's fairly accessible. Let me see if I can get
log out.
Administration.
Dashboard left turn view and customize your dashboard. Right leg. Content left turn administered leg. Dashboard left turn view and customize leg. Content left turn administer content and comments. Right leg. Structure left turn administer blocks. Leg. Appearance left turn select and configure your themes. Leg. People left turn management leg. Modules left turn enable leg. Configuration left turn administer settings. Right turn administer settings. Leg. Reports left turn view leg. Help left turn reference leg. Hide shortcuts. Leg. Add content. Leg. Find content.
We've been
leg.
there.
Edit shortcuts. Visit leg. Home. Visit leg. Test site. Home. Visit leg. Home. Visit leg. Test page. For test purposes leg. My account. Leg. Log out. Visit leg. Home. Enter the terms you wish to search button. Leg.
Okay.
Add content. Visit leg. View left turn active tab right leg. Edit. Leg. Zaren. View user profile. Leg. Zaren. View user profile. Subject. Edit text. Comment star. Edit text.
Okay, so I just, you know, went through this form, and there's the comments you can specify for.
Filtered HTML text format. Save button. Preview button. Visit leg. Drupal.
Okay, I was trying to see, let me see, give me a second here.
Item chooser menu. 102 items. 19 4 items heading level 2 administrator toolbar. Leg. Content left turn administer content and comments. Leg. Structure left turn administer leg. Configuration left turn administer settings. Leg. Configuration left turn administer settings.
So let me go there.
Safari busy. Safari busy. Leg. Skip to main content.
Okay.
Item chooser menu. 6 items. Filtered HTML text format. Pop-up leg. File system. Leg. Zaren. View leg. Zaren. View configure how content input by users is filtered, including allowed HTML text. Also allows enabling the module dash provide filters. Tell Drupal where to store uploaded files and tell Drupal where to store configure how content input. Configure how content input.
Okay. I'm trying to get us to the drag and drop widget so I can show how they.
Leg. Close overlay. Leg. Skip to main content. Leg. Leg. Administration.
Oops.
Scroll area. Leg. Skip to main content. Leg. Dashboard left heading level 2 main menu. List 2 items. Heading level 2 status message. Article Drupal test has been created. Heading level 2 you are here. Leg.
Okay.
Content left turn administer content and comments. Leg. Structure left turn administer heading level 2 main menu. List 2 items. Heading level 2 secondary menu. Heading level 2 status message. Heading level 2 you are here. Heading level 2 search form.
Okay.
Heading level 2 navigation. Heading level 1 Drupal test. List 2 items. Visit leg. View left turn app leg. Enter leg. Zaren. View on Tuesday. Host. Visit a quick Drupal test. I can't come up with anything better. Sorry. Heading level 2 add new comment.
Okay, I somehow don't see where my filters are.
Leg. Skip to main content leg. Close overlay. Visit leg.
Okay.
Home. Leg. Administration.
Okay, give me a second.
Leg. Drupal. Leg. Task left turn item chooser menu 1 item. Filtered HTML text format pop-up button. Filtered HTML text format. Filtered list 3 items. Bullet web page addresses and EDAC.
Okay, I'll see if I can.
Addresses turn to links automatically.
I'll see if I can find it later. So let me just quickly jump to WordPress. So I don't take much of your time, guys.
Tab. Go to
So I'm
this
just gonna.
address. Page address. Edit. http //Zaren /Drupal DES unhighlighted. Edit text blank. Secure edit text. Edit text blank.
Okay, so as you notice, the first thing that pops up is the login screen, right? If I just look at this login screen,
Secure edit text. Edit text blank.
So I've got, fields that I kind of have to guess what they are.
New tab button. Edit text blank.
Because there's no labels, so you don't really know what it's asking you to do, right? Well, you do know because you see it visually on the screen. I wouldn't know. I'd have to explore around and see what it is. So let me just log in here.
Edit text. HTML content. Leg, dashboard, page leg, dashboard. Visit leg, updates, leg, posts, leg, media.
So far so good.
Leg, links, leg, pages, leg, comments, leg, appearance, leg, tools, leg, settings, title, edit text, content, edit text, tabs, edit text, save draft button, publish button, leg, test WordPress site, visit site, leg, search engines blocked, leg, Xaren, edit leg, log out, visit leg, new post.
So let's do new post, just for now.
Image, enter title, page has, edit text, leaving edit text, leg, all categories, leg, most used, leg, plus add new category, add button, save draft button, leg, preview, leg, edit, publish button, leg, test WordPress site, visit site, leg, search engines blocked, leg, Xaren, edit your new tab button, save draft button, publish standard, aside, radio button 2, gallery, radio button, uncategorized, post text, edit text, add button, edit text, button, edit text, save draft button.
So as you can see, there's just the form itself. There's all kinds of added buttons that don't really say anything. And plus on top of it, there's a visual editor that's actually not very easy to navigate via keyboard. Once you switch to HTML, it sort of becomes a little simpler because you can just, it's going to be just a regular
preview
text field, but
publish button, gallery, radio button,
by default,
edit button, edit text, leg, jump to tool buttons, dash alt plus Q, jump to editor, dash alt dash C, jump, edit text.
So the visual editor isn't accessible via keyboard, so that's going to be already quite confusing for users. So again, in essence, there's no big problem with that, except that by default, WordPress has visual editor on, which means that someone probably would have to either explain to the user how to use this thing or just switch it off somehow. With Drupal, you at least start out with a simple enter, and then you can progress. If the user needs visual editor, it can be turned on. If the user doesn't need visual editor, then you just fine with this basic editor that comes by default. Let me see if I can.
Item chooser menu 142 items. Administration vertical line test site tab 1 of 2. HTTP: administration vertical line test site tab 1 of 2. Edit text.
I don't have.
Item chooser menu 211 item leg dashboard leg.
Let's just quickly go to dashboard. Okay, here we go.
Page has visit leg updates. Item chooser menu 3 items leg web lock tools collection leg 6 widgets closing. Item chooser menu visit 3 items leg web lock tools collection leg 6 widgets. Visit dashboard widget queries leg 6 widget HTML page has leg posts. Heading level 2 widgets. Heading level 3 available widgets. Heading level
so
2.
This is an interesting screen, by the way.
Leg screen options.
So right now this is a widget. By the way, those of you guys who know WordPress, widgets are these little snippets of data, or like they're little panes you can insert anywhere in your content, right? So if you wanted to have a mini calendar or events. Or a quote or whatever it is that you wanted to insert, and you can reposition those widgets anywhere in your on your page, which is kind of a very cool feature because it's quick and it allows you to sort of play around with your layout very easily without knowing too much about development or anything like that. The problem is that by default these widgets you can't really drag them via keyboard, and so what these guys have developed is that there's this link, don't know if you can see it, it's called screen options. Oh, by the way, I'm just tabbing through. So you got the idea, right? So it's, yeah, so if I do this, let me see, there's screen.
Item chooser menu, H2 items leg, screen options, screen options.
If I open screen options, I think you should open up.
Heading level 2 widgets.
Let me see.
Screen options. Leg. Enable accessibility mode.
Yeah, see, there's this thing called enable accessibility mode. Once you turn this on,
Press leg. HTML page has.
then you can actually move these widgets around. You know, nice workaround, but it's not super obvious. It took me actually some playing around to figure out that the screen options. And I think they have this screen options mode on a couple of other screens as well. I don't know if there's a way to make it a default into accessibility. At least there is a workaround, but you know, it's not, you know, something immediately available. Now, this screen accessibility options, they only sort of enable the navigation part, which is like in this case to drag and drop widgets. They don't really fix any other accessibility problems. Like if you look at dashboard.
One item. Visit leg. Dashboard.
So let's just say, if I just tap through this dashboard, you'll see there's a lot of.
Hey, visit leg. Updates. Leg. Comments.
Okay, this is fine.
Leg. Settings. Type content. Edit text. Tags. Edit text. Save draft button. Publish button. Leg. Test WordPress site. Leg. Search engines blocked. Leg.
Wait,
leg. Tech compound. Leg. Set leg. Tools.
Tools.
HTML page has. Fork. Leg. Test WordPress site. Leg. Import. Visit leg. Tools. Visit leg. Tools. Leg. Users. Leg. Plugins. Leg. Appearance. Leg. Comments.
So the one thing is the WordPress is relying heavily on menus. Some of this can be expanded, but obviously when you tab, you just hear link. You don't know which menus are, which menus are menus and which are just links. So, you know, it's doable. I've been using WordPress as well, but like I said, I just find it, in terms of accessibility, is a bit more cumbersome to use than Drupal. So, let me see. I'm going to try one more time to see if I can find drag and drop here in Drupal. And so give me like literally maybe 2 minutes. If I don't find it, then I'll just give it. I'll turn it over to Ted.
Task not clear and active. Index.
I played with this
yesterday. Dashboard. Content. Structure. Appearance. People. Modules. Configuration. Reports. Configuration. Drupal. Skip to main content. Visit home item 6 items. Filtered HTML text format pop-up button. File system. Xaren. View user profile. Configure how content input by users is filtered, including allowed HTML text. Also allows enabling the module gap provided built. Tell Drupal where to store uploaded files. Tell Drupal where to store. Tell Drupal.
Okay, I'm sure I'll be able to find it once the demo is over, but I can't find it right now. So I'll turn it over to Ted to talk about some of the things we have been doing with WordPress. But hopefully this gives you a bit of understanding. So just to summarize some of that stuff. So on the user side, when we talk about any of these content management systems, there is really no inherent reason why pages should not be accessible. On the administration panel side, it really depends. Remember, there are themes. You can always develop a theme for some of these things, which will fix the problems that exist in a default installation. But by default, in my view, I think Drupal is way more accessible, although harder things to find, as you have just experienced. But WordPress is much more friendly, but definitely more less friendly in terms of accessibility. And so I'll let.
Are there any questions?
Yeah, are there any questions, guys? Or you want to keep them?
Hi, my question is about the overlay in Drupal 7. I don't know if you can see on the screen that when you edit a page, unlike Drupal 6, where when you click the edit link, you go to a new page with a new form. In Drupal 7, when you click the edit link, for example, the edit form is overlaid on top of the page you're editing. And there was a whole lot of debate before Drupal 7 was released about whether the overlay was accessible. And I saw that when we were watching while you were tabbing through, it was really hard to tell where you were. So I was wondering what your experience of using Drupal 7 with the overlay is. Do you find it usable, or do you recommend turning it on or off? How do you use that?
I think for most screen reader users, it will be, it would be probably unnecessary because, it provides a nice visual convenience feature, and there's a link that allows you to close it. But if there was, I'm not sure, there may be a way to close it, turn it off globally. I don't actually think it adds much. As you have pointed out, it actually adds more tab stops. But it really, because it does repeat a lot of the information that is already somewhere else. And so I personally don't find it useful from the screen reader point of view. And I think a lot of people who are especially beginner users, they probably find it just too much tabbing around, right? So that's, I hope that answers your question.
Okay. Yeah, thanks.
We have a blog, Yahoo Accessibility Labs blog. It's accessibility.yahoo.com. And part of that is a code library, accessibility.yahoo.com/library. And you can find some information on how you can make overlays more accessible. Any other questions? Okay.
No? Okay, cool. So you just... Okay, here's the cable. Okay, cool. Here's the
Only if you want me to contact you.
Should have like a disclaimer that you promise not to share.
I have uploaded these. I only have a few slides, but I have already uploaded them to slideshare.net. So it's slideshare.net/7mary4 is my account. And you can actually get these slides already. So I've been using WordPress since it first started. I can't even tell you how many years that is. I just remember when it first came out, I thought it was a pretty neat thing. And I can't remember the old CMS at that time, and I never liked it. So for me, WordPress was really cool. It was easy to start building web pages. I could build something in 30 minutes. It may not have worked perfect, but it was easy. Over the years, I've built custom themes as I needed them. I've taken other themes and modified them. For the Yahoo Accessibility Lab, we have a website. It's accessibility.yahoo.com, and we use the WordPress platform. Yahoo is actually investing quite a bit in WordPress. We used to have our own built-in blog platform that we spent a lot of money developing, and we basically just threw that out, and now we're going to be using WordPress internally and externally. So if somebody, if sports decides to have a blog, it'll be WordPress. I mean, like if you want to create a blog on the sports website. So I'm going to go over a few of the elements that we've done that make this blog a wee bit more accessible. And some of the things that you can do for your blogs that will make them more accessible. Just a few simple programming and some strategies. One of the things I found that was interesting is we have a large percentage of users, not necessarily programmers. So I did want to go over something really quick that I learned as I've been teaching people how to use WordPress. So this is a Microsoft Word document, and I've got a few pieces of text here. This down here, where it says this is not a header, it just looks like one. This is where I've gone over and I've said make it bold, make it size 16. In fact, I'm going to add a font. Let's see if I can get a font going. If this is what you're doing, this is going to make it more difficult to use WordPress. What you want to do from Microsoft Word is you want to have as clean of code as possible, as clean of text as possible. You don't want to use any styles. You can use a bold and you can use an italic when necessary, but you don't want to touch any fonts. You don't want to touch any font sizes. None of that stuff. So this is a header. I'm going to come over here to the styles. I'm going to make that a heading 1. And this will be a header 2. And a header 3. I'm not worried about the color or fonts or anything at this point. And these guys are going to be a list item. So I'm going to go down to the bullets and numbering, and I'm going to choose that. If you can do this in your Word documents, it used to be, I've had to do a lot of, when I help someone set up a new website, they send over a bunch of text in Word. First thing I do is clear all the formatting in the page. I might save the original, and then I create a new version, I clear all the formatting, then I go in there and I do this exact same thing. I use the headings, I use the list items. Now I'm going to take this, and I'm going to select this, and let's go over to a WordPress. And through the visual editor, so I'm going to use the visual tag, and I'm going to go ahead and paste that in. That's odd that it, I wonder why I got all that. Let me try that one more time. I don't want the HTML, I want the visual. Let's go to the HTML. The first thing you need to do is get rid of all that CSS. Now, if you look at the code, that header 1 is marked up in an H1. The paragraph doesn't need anything because just by having that empty space is all you need in WordPress. You can see that the header 2 is now wrapped in an H2. The header 3 is wrapped in an H3. The unordered list is now properly marked up. And then down here you have the strong. You know, that doesn't mean anything. That's what used to look like a header. So whenever you're using Word, just don't use any kind of formatting. Just use the basic elements. It's a header, it's an unordered list, it's a paragraph. If you do that and then you put it into WordPress, you're going to get that cleaner code. Your users are going to be better. The code's going to be lighter because you're not going to have all those MSO attributes in the middle of paragraphs and all that strange stuff. That's one of the first things that I learned when doing a lot of Microsoft Word to WordPress conversions. Any questions about that? Let me go back over to the presentation. So this is our website. We worked on it quite a bit, and we're pretty proud of it. There's a lot of stuff in here that we've put in that you may not see, and I want to go over a few of those elements. For instance, we're going to talk about the carousel, which is the main story. We used to have just one main story, but we've been adding more and more content on a regular basis. So we wanted to make sure that people really saw everything that's been uploaded for the week. We have a Facebook module that everybody seems to have. We had to modify that. And you may not see it. Just below this thing, there's a read more link, and I'm going to talk about read more links. So the accessible carousel. One of the problems that you see with carousels, there's many ways of building them, and there's a million carousels out there. At Yahoo, I can tell you I've worked on like 7 different properties, and I think I've had to deal with about 15 different carousels. It just seems like every time there's a design, we have to create a new one. And so in Yahoo, we created this library called the YUI, Yahoo User Interface Library. And in that library, you can get a carousel. And there's one called the YUI Carousel ARIA plugin. This was designed by one of the guys in the Yahoo Accessibility Lab. And it's really fantastic. This carousel incorporates all of the ARIA, all of the tab index, all the tab focus. It shows the user what thing is being selected. So right now I have a slide, a carousel object, and there's only one story. But if there were 3 stories in there and you're tabbing through there, it would show you which story is being highlighted. It's extremely easy to use. All the code is there. So all you have to do pretty much is we even take the JavaScript and we pass the JavaScript all over the world, so you don't even have to worry about, you know, someone's in India versus Russia versus California looking at your stuff. It'll always be fast. You insert the 2 JavaScripts that are needed, you make a few adjustments in your page, and you use the right markup. It's really simple. It can be done in, you know, 20, 30 minutes. It's not difficult. I'm not a JavaScript person, believe me, and I found it easy. I've always worked on teams with great JavaScript people, so believe me, I'm not good. And I was able to do this. So if you go to the YUI Carousel plugin page, some of the things that are being done, we have labels on all of these little buttons So the people know I'm going to page 1 or I'm going to page 2. It sets the focus so that when something moves into focus, you know that that's now in focus. These are things that we don't think about visually. But for the screen reader user, when they're looking at some of these carousels, a lot of times people throw a bunch of content off the page. And if I'm using a keyboard and I'm tabbing, and so here's my page, I'm doing air quotes for anybody that can't see it, but here's my page in front of me, and I'm tabbing, and my page is not really changing, but there's like this next story that's 20 inches off the screen, and then there's another story that's 40 inches off the screen, and I'm hitting my tab key and nothing's happening visually to the page. That's what happens in a lot of carousels because the keyboard is not actually connected to the code. So one of the nice things about this carousel is that it's fully keyboard compatible. Whether you use a screen reader or not, it will work with your keyboard. Another thing that's really horrible for people who use screen readers, and you see this a lot on blog pages because they are time-oriented. You got an article now, you had an article yesterday, you had an article last week, and we want to show like a little summary of the article. And after that summary, we have a little link that says read more, which visually makes a lot of sense because I see the headline, I see the summary, I see read more, I understand that. But for someone that's using a screen reader, one of the ways they navigate a page is they navigate by links. And when they look at all the links on a page, they may have 30 or 40 of these links that say nothing but read more. And that's really not helpful for anybody. It's also not helpful for Google or Yahoo or Bing because we want links that say this is what this article is about. And if all we know it's about is read more, that doesn't really tell us anything. So one of the things we do is while visually it says read more, we have an invisible extra text that says read more and then about, and then it has the headline of the article. So when they're looking at a list of all the articles, they're not seeing read more. They're seeing read more from captioning wordless movie trailers, read more from the librarian Disability Land. This makes it much easier, and it's one of the things that we fight internally with all of our editors, with all of our pages. When we see like Yahoo News, and Yahoo News has 15 read more links, we go to them, we say this is not good. Actually, a lot of the Yahoo sites are doing something like what we're doing here. We're actually hiding a little extra information. Now you might think this is kind of difficult. How do I do this? Let me just show you how simple this is. When you use WordPress and you want to show a truncated version of the code, you use something in the PHP and the template that says the content. That's the name of the function. And normally it's just the content and it's just empty. But all you have to do is you put continue reading, and then I put span, and then I put the title, and then I close the span. I have an article on this. It's on Yahoo Accessibility Lab/library. And if you do a search for WordPress, you'll find this article. But that's really all that we're doing. We're basically saying, show me the content, and if it's truncated, we're going to insert this information into the title.
Could you put that information before the read more?
You could, yeah.
Can you repeat the question?
Oh, I'm sorry. She asked, can you put the information before the read more? There's no reason why you can't. I simply, when I did it, I said I want the title and then continue reading or read more. In fact, actually, now that I'm looking at this example, it is before the title. We have it in 2 spaces of our site. So this one's saying continue reading, span the title. In another part of our site, we say read more and then the span. So yeah, this is exactly how to put it before. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm.
Although putting it before might have a little problem, which is, usually the headings of the articles are already links, so you can click on them and open the article. So if you're tabbing, you may end up hearing the title of the article twice. So I think putting it after read more probably makes a bit more sense, in my view at least. But that's for discussion, I guess.
Any other question?
I just wondering, what does that actually put onto the page?
So what it puts onto the page is it'll be ahref, read more, span from, let me just go back one. this text right here, it says, read more from captioning wordless movie trailers. The text from captioning wordless movie trailers is wrapped in a span inside the link. And then I use CSS to take that span and hide the span. So visually it's not there, but to the screen reader user or to the spider, they're seeing the full text. Yes? No, we're not using display none. In fact, we have a really good article on our library section about how to hide text. And I highly recommend it. What we're actually using, let me go back one step. We're recommending a technique called clip. Now what clip says is, it's an obscure CSS reference, so a rule, so you're very likely to never have to worry about it kind of overlapping. But what it basically says is take this text and position it absolutely, which takes it out of the flow. It just sits there. And then I want you to clip it into a rectangle that's only 1 pixel by 1 pixel by 1 pixel by 1 pixel. So essentially, you've got this block of text, and we're only going to show 1 little pixel of it, which is going to be empty space because you got some white space anyways. By doing that, we have to worry about when one of our sites goes to Saudi Arabia. And then all of a sudden, text is going in the other direction. If we used text that was pushed off screen to the left, then all of a sudden they end up with this huge scroll bar. By using the clip technique, we can go right to left or left to right, and we don't have a problem. So if you go to accessibility.yahoo.com/library, that's where, and you do a search for CSS or clip, you'll find that article. It's an excellent article. It talks about all the different reasons why you would want to use display none, visibility hidden, or the clip technique. Another thing that we do on our site is we use landmarks. ARIA is a programming technique that's been introduced in the last few years. And the concept was when the internet first started, we were looking at documents. You know, you go to Wikipedia and you look at a document. It doesn't do much. But when you go to a site like Flickr or Twitter or even the Yahoo homepage, and definitely Yahoo Mail, when you go to these pages and you click on something, something happens. It's no longer a document. It's more like a native application on your computer. So how can we take HTML that we're already working with and make it act more like a native application? Not necessarily, visually it might all be the same, but how do we tell a screen reader that this thing is not just an unordered list, but it's actually a navigation bar? This link is not a link, but it's actually a button that's going to create an action. This is not just any form, but this is the search form. These are the kind of things, this is a tab. So when I click on this link, it's a tab. It's going to open up a tab panel. We want screen readers to interpret these pages the same way they would interpret if I'm in Microsoft Word and I want to open up a tab panel in the inspector. This is the concept behind ARIA. So one of the things we use is landmarks. Using landmarks is very similar to HTML5 if you're working in HTML5. We can say this is the navigation, this is the search, this is the main content, this is the footer. We can then let the screen reader user say, I want to skip directly to the main section. I want to skip directly to the search engine. I want to skip directly to the navigation. It's like having those skip to main content links, but now they can skip to all sorts of the pages. We also use ARIA roles to do things like saying, this link is not a link, it's a button. So when you click on this link, it's actually going to do something like close a window. We use it to say something. What I'm showing you here, I've got this pink thing. It looks really ugly. And some green text. On the accessibility.yahoo.com/library, we also have an article that's these simple bookmarklets that let you check. You go to a web page, you click this bookmarklet, and it changes the page, and it really shows you where any landmarks happen to be, where any roles, and any tab index. That's what you're seeing. That's why it looks kind of ugly. And I designed this to be as ugly as possible because I really wanted people to see what's happening. But we have something called presentation, which basically tells the screen reader, like, this is not something that you need to worry about right now. Like, maybe it's a table being used for layout, and this is not a data table, so just kind of ignore this. That's what presentation is being used for. So it's really easy to use landmarks. All you have to do is, ARIA uses this new attribute called role. So if you're building your theme and you have a navigation in the top and it sits inside a div, all you have to do is put role equals navigation. And that's all you need to do to tell the screen reader that this is going to be a navigation area. If you have a form that's being used for search, simply put role equals search on the form. Now, one of the things to think about when you add a role to a tag, it's overriding what that tag normally would have done. So a div, if I put role equals search on like the submit button, then it would tell the screen reader that that submit button is the search form. We don't want to do that. We want to put it on the form because we're basically saying this is a form, but it's really the search form. So put the role, it is important you put it on the most appropriate container. Div role equals navigation, form role equals search. The div that holds your main content, you would put role equals main. If you've got a really ancient website, it's using tables for layout, you can still put these on like the TD that contains your stuff. And if you have a link and the first thing you see is like href equals JavaScript, hopefully you don't have that too many times. But if you have a link that's not acting as a link should take you to a new page. But if it's not taking you to a new page, instead it's, you know, closing a window, then simply putting role equals button will tell the screen reader, instead of saying link, it will say button. And the screen reader user will have a better idea as to what this thing's going to happen. It's not going to take me to a new page, it's going to create an action. Role equals button is a shortcut way of fixing this solution. The better solution is to actually use buttons in your HTML code. But if you've already got something built, you can add role equals button, and it really helps. So ARIA roles are a way of helping people using screen readers understand a little bit more about what's happening in your page. There's a little bit of, if you're moving into HTML5 and you're going to start using things like the navigation or the footer tags, I'm trying to think, I think it's nav is the tag. There's still some argument as to what's the best way of working with those. So at this point, if you're using HTML5 and the new tags brought in by HTML5, the way we mix ARIA with that, I think you can still go with nav role equals navigation, but we'll have to see how that plays out. Another problem that we have, a lot of problems we have on the web, is iframes. So an iframe basically is taking a website from another location and inserting it in the middle of your page. And this works great. It allows something like the Facebook module. So on your side, you put in a little iframe, and that iframe takes up not much of your code. It goes to Facebook. It passes a lot of information to Facebook. Facebook does a lot of manipulation. It generates this ugly table and whatnot, and then it sends it back to you and puts it into your page. Or it could be an ad, or it could be something that we use for finding out how fast your page is loading. But think of yourself as a screen reader, and think of a page like walking down a hallway, especially like in a university. When you walk down the hallway, you can look through a window and you can kind of see, hey, this is going to be a classroom, or this is going to be a cafe, or this is going to be an office. It's easy to walk down a hallway and decide, this is the room I want to go to. When you have an iframe, they have no idea what's going to be in that iframe. So it's like walking down the hallway and all of a sudden there's this iron door. There's no windows, there's no people, there's no sign or anything. Are they going to really be interested in opening up that door? Now, if that door is your Facebook module, or it could be an ad, you want them to. If it's a beacon, maybe you don't want them to. If you don't really need to look at this image that's being sent to another website just to see how fast it's going back and forth. So it's easy to give your iframe a title. And this is how we did it. Basically, iframe, title, and something like us on Facebook. If you put that on your iframe, when they're going through the website, then they're saying, oh, here's an iframe, but oh, it's a Facebook module. Oh, I want to see what's on Facebook. So it's really simple. It makes a big difference. Now, with WordPress, the Facebook is typically a widget. And so you actually need to edit the widget, and every time you update that widget, you're going to have to edit it again. Fortunately, it's not difficult. And so I created a quick movie. I'm going to go down to the plugins, and it's going to select plugins directory, and then I'm going to choose the Facebook like box, and I'm going to hit the edit button. And then I'm going to scroll down. It's almost towards the end where it actually has the iframe code. And then you'll see me highlight where it says title. And so that's all I did to insert the title into the Facebook. Facebook's not doing this for us, so we have to modify it ourselves. And there's 2 locations where it could be. So that's all I had to do in order to add a title to the Facebook iframe. Also, fortunately, Facebook has recently fixed their module, and it used to be that all of those avatars had no alt attribute. And from what I've seen lately, they're actually now at least providing us with images that have alt attributes. That's going to help us out a lot. That's all I have for my presentation. I just wanted to show you a few things that we've done. Are there any questions? Sure.
Yeah, I've had trouble locating a font resizer, like say for the corner of the web page. Like I've found a couple of plugins over the years. Thanks. Found a couple of plugins over the years. They worked moderately well. A couple of themes that might have had it integrated. Do you have any suggestions as to, like, maybe you could use jQuery or something like that if you want to resize the font, or you want to give the user the ability to resize the fonts on the fly on your site?
So using font resizers is kind of still controversial. In fact, I was just reading an article this morning saying, do we really need font resizers? The concept behind it is fairly simple. We have a link, and that link allows you to say, make my text bigger or smaller. It's required in a lot of accessibility requirements, but it's also available by using the basic browser settings. Let me turn that off. So one of the things that we recommend and what we do at Yahoo is we use the Yahoo user interface CSS files, which basically set the default fonts and then makes it so that the fonts can be easily sized up and down. Now, when it comes to actually creating the widget that you're talking about, it's not difficult to build that widget. It could either be something that basically switches the style sheet that someone uses, or it's a widget where it changes the class on the body. And then from changing the class on the body, that changes the size of the fonts. I haven't tried using any particular plugin. The easiest way to do that would be to create your own set of links that changes the body on the class. It's faster and more performant for us to change the class on a body, which then changes all the fonts, than it is for us to actually try to manipulate stuff as we go along. That could also include if you were going to say, I want the largest text possible by changing the body on the class on the body. You could also incorporate other things like possibly wider margins, removing a colored background. So that might be looking at your particular site. You may make other adjustments. That also goes back to something that Joe Clark from Toronto used to talk about, which is a zoom layout, which means that if I'm going to a really large font, maybe I need to get rid of a 2 or 3 column layout and switch things to a 1 column layout at the same time, which would help readability quite a bit. I don't know of a particular plugin for that, but the JavaScript behind that is pretty simple. It's like get the body tag and change the class from X to Y. That's all that needs to be done. So it's not a difficult plugin. Any other questions? I think Victor did mention that in WordPress, if I go down to users, I think Victor's user profile has his settings are set up already to disable visual formatting and things like that. That is possible to do on a user-by-user profile basis. Are you on page 2? Yeah. That's the advantage of having V as your first name. So no, we didn't disable it yet, but here's how you would, on a user basis, you can disable the visual editor so that whenever Victor signs into the blog, he doesn't see all that visual editing, but when I sign into the blog, I want to be able to use it. So let me update that right now. That helps in a team situation. I personally like the visual because then I can use the Zamanta plugin. That only works in the visual.
Also, Ted, I wanted to add that, like I mentioned, like I mentioned before, both Drupal and WordPress have really lots of themes and, plugins. So you may guys want to first go and look through available stuff, and you may just take and repurpose something that someone already has done, and just reuse it. The cool thing is that, actually every user can have their own theme, which is kind of cool because you could have, a basic theme, you can have more advanced theme, and this could be, at least in Drupal, I know for sure this could be done on per user basis, so every user can have their own thing. When they log in, they'll see their own thing, which is nice.
Let me just show you real quick. On the Accessibility Library blog, this first main article will show you how you can get those bookmarklets that let you find the landmarks tab index. It also has another one that, if you're testing keyboard navigation, sometimes it's hard to find what's in focus. So that other bookmarklet puts a red border around whatever's in focus, which really helps us testing sometimes. That's this test aria in focus. The keyboard accessibility for web applications was written by one of the guys behind Yahoo Mail. There's some really good information as to what they did behind that. And the WordPress link in the tag section will take you to the read more links. And I'm just going to do a quick search for clip, and I think I can find that. Clip your hidden content for better accessibility. I paste this article into almost every bug I seem to write at Yahoo. One of the reasons why we have this library is we got tired of writing the same thing over and over and over. So if I go to a site on Yahoo and I find a bug, the first thing I do is I make a bug and then I paste in the resource links so that they can say, well, here's the best way to do that. This was written by Thierry Koblenz, who's one of the best CSS people out there. And he talks about why would you want to use each individual elements. And at the very end, you get his full CSS to make things visible or invisible. And that's at accessibility.yahoo.com/library or yaccessibilityblog.com/library. And are you ready?
Well, I first of all want to thank Victor and Ted for coming out today. And most of all, I also want to thank all of you for coming out today because, once again, you've shown that accessibility at Berkeley is alive and well and that you all care about accessibility enough to take your lunch hour and come and spend it with us. Any further questions? All right, keep your eyes on the WebNet list for next year's schedule, and the Accessibility Committee will be back next year in June for another accessibility presentation. My email address is lgreco.berkeley.edu. If any of you want to ask me any questions, feel free to email me. And this will be streamed within the next week or so. Thank you. Take care and have a good afternoon.